Just have to interrupt you here for a moment because, wouldn't you know, we've got some breaking news that's coming into us right now. We are now able to report, and we've been following this for quite a while, we want to make sure we could confirm it, that a plane has apparently gone down in the Hudson. As you know, anybody who's familiar with New York City, there are several airports that surround it, LaGuardia, of course, being the most prominent. You see the tail of the plane right there. As you take a look at this picture, you can see some of the ferries are coming near it now. Those are those ferries that transport people back and forth, usually between New Jersey and the downtown section of New York City. The plane sits in what is apparently not that much depth of water. You can see the tail, you see the cabin of the plane. In fact, the entire plane is visible at this point. We don't know if a rescue operation is underway or has been. We're going to stay with this picture now and make sure that it plays out. Michael, you were sharing with me some information later. Is this the note you just handed me? All right, here we go. New York City firefighters, according to the Associated Press, have officially responded to the report of an airplane down in the Hudson River. But as you look at these pictures, all right, there come the authorities now. I can tell you from living in New York for quite a while that what we're looking at here are not authorities. Those are private ferry boats that ferry people back and forth across New Jersey. But now you see at the top of your picture there, now we're starting to get some of the authorities coming on to the scene. And you see it right there at the top right of your picture. That's one of the either police boats or fire rescue boats that's coming to the scene. It does appear that the plane is listing. Take a look at how it looked a moment ago when I was first looking at it, and look at it now. And I guess what we need to examine here as we look at this, if there is a rescue, whether they can get the people out, whether it's be depressurized enough to be able to open the doors so that the people can get out of the plane. And obviously we can all say a prayer that that plane doesn't submerge with people still on board, which is tough to tell right now as we're looking at that, whether that's actually going on. It does look a little different than when we first saw it. It does look like the back part of the plane is, in fact, where the tail is starting to go under. Give me the information again, Angie, on the flight. This is flight 1549, and I was right in my supposition that it had probably left from LaGuardia. Charlotte, it was from LaGuardia to Charlotte, heading for the Carolinas, and the FAA is now telling us that there may have been something that caused the plane to go down. You know, oftentimes what is the most dangerous part of a flight is the takeoff and the landing, and in this case it was apparently on takeoff. They're saying at the FAA that it may have struck something, possibly a bird, not confirmed, but preliminary reports are that it struck possibly a bird, it caused it to come down, and that's why it's sitting there in the Hudson. We can only hope that that's shallow enough water that the plane is not going to go down any further, although we're not able to make that conclusion yet. We're hoping to be able to talk to somebody there who's perhaps in one of those ferries who can share. Look how many of those ferries, you know, these are all the ferries that take people across, and all of them are responding to the scene now in New York City, as you can see, to try and see if they can do something to help the people on board. 1549, I'm sorry, Angie, what was the airways again? Yeah, it was U.S. Air. It was a U.S. Airways flight. Thank you, Michael. U.S. Airways flight. It was heading from LaGuardia to Charlotte. It's come down in water. For those of you who know anything about aviation, it's very possible that this pilot was able to make a good landing there without causing any structural damage to the plane. In fact, none that we can see at this point, and that's certainly an important part of the story. What remains to be seen at this point as we look at this is whether the plane is in a stable situation now, and whether any of those passengers have gotten out yet. Usually in a situation like this, and you can only imagine how cold those waters are, so you have to worry about hypothermia. How many people on board, Chris? 135 people are aboard this plane, from the information that we've just received. And again, it's flight 1549, U.S. Airways from LaGuardia to Charlotte. Sometimes it's just as important to tell you what we don't know. We don't know at this point whether anybody has been taken out of the plane. We don't know at this point whether anyone has been injured. Obviously, you hear the commotion here at the CNN headquarters in Atlanta, where we're continuing to get more information, where we expect to be able to get somebody on the phone shortly. This is Ben, who's joining us now. He is on the phone with us. He is, I imagine, are you on the New York side or on the New Jersey side, Ben?
I'm on the New York side. I'm at 48th Street and Broadway.
What did you see?
I'm in an office building on the 25th floor. A short time ago, I saw what looked to be a very small commercial airplane flying south along the Hudson River, making what appeared to be a very gradual landing. I then saw the plane hit the water. It made a big splash. The plane then went into a space where my view was obstructed, so I didn't see whether it was on the surface of the water or whether it sank or not. But I did see it hit the water at a very gradual angle. As it came in, it appeared not to have any landing gear engaged. This was definitely bigger than a puddle jumper or a seaplane or anything. It was a silver aircraft, and it basically just hit the water.
Hey, Ben, hold on just a minute. I'm being told, by the way, Susan Lesovich has just called into us there. You know, Susan Lesovich is over there on Wall Street. In fact, we were going to be getting to her for just a little bit. And she was answering the question that I was raising about how deep this water is, because obviously that comes into play there. And she says this is deep water. This is the deep water side of the Hudson. Ben, let me get back to you if I can. So the landing, or the crash landing, or the splash landing, I guess it's called, as you would see it, was a controlled landing. There were no big problems as far as you could tell? Ben, are you still there?
Yeah, I am here.
I'm sorry, maybe you didn't hear my question. Describe the landing to us. We're trying to get a sense of whether it was a controlled splash landing that pilots are trained to do, or whether you saw anything about it that was unusual.
Well, I mean, I don't really know what pilots are trained to do and not to, but basically, I'll just put it this way. If someone was going to try to land a plane in the water, this seemed to be the best possible way to do it. The angle at which they hit the water was very, very gradual. And it wasn't going, particularly fast. It was a very slow contact with the water that it made. Again, I did not see whether the plane sank or remained on the surface of the water, but it was a very slow, calm, if you will, contact with the water that the aircraft made.
You know, I imagine they have to be extremely careful when they start opening compartments to get people out of there, that the plane might not suddenly fill with water. I imagine that there's a strategy that they would employ in a situation like this. Chad Myers joining us now. Chad, for starters, and I know that you've got some experience with this kind of thing, what is the temperature of that water there off of LaGuardia on the Hudson Bay?
43 degrees, Rick. Air temperature is 21. The water is warmer than the air, but that doesn't help. 43 is hypothermia in less than minutes here. So there you see all the ferries, and there are some little, some rigid hull inflatables out there for those people, getting them out. The wind chill, 35 degrees right now.
Wow.
And that is just, it is so cold. That's just as soon as you get out of the water. You get a 21-degree air temp with another 15-degree wind, and you're wet. I mean, you're going to feel like zero in no time. This is very, very much minute by minute for everybody that's on that airplane.
This plane, by the way, flight 1549, was heading from LaGuardia to Charlotte when apparently it went down. FAA's preliminary report seems to indicate that it may have been as a result of hitting some kind of obstruction. Preliminary reports indicate it may have been a bird. The plane has been there on the ground, surrounded by those New York ferries. We see a helicopter flying above. We also see some rescue officials that arrived just moments ago, but we don't yet know, nor am I able to tell from these pictures. Chad, I don't know if you could tell or not. You know, usually by now we would have seen one of the chutes deployed, we would have seen a door open, and we would have seen people on life jackets. Do you see anybody bobbing in the water? Maybe it's because my monitor here is pretty small. I don't want to be saying something isn't happening if the folks at home are seeing it. Can you tell? You got a good plasma back there?
I have a good screen here, and I am seeing little rigid hull, what I consider rigid hull inflatables, coming out and going back to these ferries, getting people one at a time or 10 at a time back into these ferries, and some ferries leaving, which indicates to me that they're probably leaving with people, or they wouldn't be leaving because they know that they're needed there for that rescue. What really surprises me...
Well, hold on a minute, Chad. I'm just going to stop you for a moment. I want you to finish, but I just got some information from Jean Meserve. She just... contacted the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard says they are now dropping life jackets in the water for some of the passengers as they get off of, so that they can drop life jackets in the water, and that they're being dropped off from one of those ferries that you see. There we see a different angle, and this kind of gives us a little bit of a different perspective. And this is a 320, by the way, the plane is. Can you tell, Chad, as long as we've been looking at this, and this is the thing that worries me somewhat, and it is pretty close to shore, which is also a good thing, but can you tell if this plane has been submerging a little bit while you and I have been conversing?
It has. It's been going down a little bit, but what really amazes me is that we're still afloat. This leaves plenty of time for the people to get off. It's not going to be pleasant inside that plane, but they have plenty of time to get out of there at this point in time. I mean, I've now been watching this plane for 15 minutes, and even at chaos inside that airplane, we were going to be able to get more than people off if this thing went down right away. And the reason why it didn't go down right away is because of that gentle landing that eyewitness talked about.
Yeah.
Didn't tear the bottom of the plane apart as it hit the water, so therefore you still had a very good rigid hull under the bottom of it, allowing, sure, water leakage, but not this water pouring in if there were large holes in the bottom of this fuselage. And you know, this thing is made to be flying at 40,000 feet, and so it's a sealed part, it's a sealed tube, and it's still remaining sealed, and people are being saved right now because that thing is still on top of the water.
Yeah, no, you're right, and it's extremely important for that fuselage to remain intact. I'm just wondering now if it's possible that they will try in some way or measure to maneuver the plane. Look, in that other picture, they're not that far away from the ferry landings over there. You see them over there?
Absolutely.
See the backside of New York City? I mean, the closer they can get it to land, the less deep the water, the better the situation. For those of you joining us now, it is 57 minutes after the hour of 3 o'clock, and as you look at this, a plane, Flight 1549, has, U.S. Airways Flight 1549, has come down in Hudson Bay after leaving LaGuardia, heading for Charlotte. Preliminary indications were that there were more than 100 people on board. We're working to secure that information as well. And we're also getting information, according to the FAA, that the flight may have hit an obstacle, perhaps a bird in the air that may have caused it to come down. We've learned moments ago from Gene Meserve that the Coast Guard is making sure that there are plenty of life vests in the water so that passengers, if they get off the plane, can then be are able to use those life vests for themselves. Hard to tell as we look at this to see exactly what the strategy is at this point. There's the possibility they may want to try and somehow anchor those the tail and the fuselage of the plane to some of those ferries to make sure it doesn't go under anymore. And there's a possibility they might try to maneuver it as well. Both of those would mean that the people on board can almost stay put before they'd have to come out of the water. But from this picture, Chad, it's tough to tell, isn't it?
It is.